Welcome to the Pizza Buffet right here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel, part of the Hammer Betting Network and powered by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I am Rob Pizzola. Thank you to everyone who's tuning in, whether you're new, old, been around for a while. Happy to have you here. Just a reminder how this works. This is not a show about what I already bet, recapping everything else from Forward Progress from earlier this week. I'm focusing on right now. This is major market sides and totals. What would I bet if I had no bets right now throughout the week? So what I'll do is I'll go top to bottom, rotation number order, break down the game, what I see, whether or not I think that it is worth a bet. A little bit tired already this morning. I was up early watching some Ryder Cup. I see some people in the chat that don't want it spoiled. I won't spoil it, but coming to a conclusion here up in front of me, also on the Jags, -3 in the early going here. Feels like they should be up a lot more than 17 points at the end of the first half, but it is what it is. I'm hoping that this Heineke, I haven't seen if anyone's come out or if they've announced Heineke coming in, but that would be very upsetting for me. One other thing, there's a Right Angle Sports release show right now happening. I imagine that they just released the Saints in all likelihood based off of the market movement. I just wanted to get that out of the way before I got into it here to avoid any sort of movement. As always, quick recap of last week. As always, I lock in my picks courtesy of betstamp. Betstamp available on Android and iOS. You can check it out, download it, or check out the website betstamp.app. Last week was a losing week. This year's been slightly positive, 4% ROI so far for the year, down overall lifetime. Lost by the hook on the Cowboys game last week. Unfortunately, that was the best game day price. What are you going to do? Carolina was the big one that lost. And honestly, process over results in a lot of cases. I think Carolina, in my opinion, was the right side of the game, and they just unfortunately had a lot of defensive injuries over the course of the game that led to Seattle being able to move the ball rather effectively on the ground. But it is what it is. We're on to this week. Few things of note. First of all, if you're in the stream already, just smash that like button down below. Really quickly, takes 2 seconds, helps us elevate our content in real time. Second of all, if you have not deposited or signed up to Pinnacle Sportsbook in Ontario yet, do so. You're going to see over the course of this show, I'm going to bring up a bunch of odds on screen, and often case, you're going to see Pinnacle has the best price in market. This is going to be pretty regular because they are very competitive on price. I often preach line shopping. I would never consider betting without Pinnacle as one of my main sportsbook accounts. So bet smart, bet Pinnacle, your trusted sportsbook for the past 25 years. And if you do sign up, use code HAMMER, HAMMER. It does go a long way in supporting the show. You must be 19 plus, not available in the US. And as always, please play responsibly. Can't stress that enough. I know some of you probably bet the Thursday night game, maybe won, maybe lost. Maybe you have money on the Atlanta Falcons right now and you're sweating or something along those lines. Just don't let that get in the way of what you want to do today with the NFL. Always bet responsibly. All right, let's get into it. Okay, Atlanta started already. So Miami and Buffalo. I will note before we get into this as a whole, today is very likely going to be a low volume day. I have my numbers up in front of me on my left here, just looking at edges, and it seems like we're very likely going to be low volume here. So just, again, I'll go through every single game like I normally do, but please be aware of that. Buffalo and Miami. So market at Pinnacle -2.5, -116. Best price in market, as you can see here, all the way down the board. I've made my thoughts on this game known this week, but I'm going to play the Buffalo Bills for a full unit. So we're going to play 116 to win 100. This isn't a I don't want to come out here and rip the Miami Dolphins or anything. I think Miami's a very good team. I've upgraded them quite a bit. But we still have like a discrepancy, in my opinion, between Miami and Buffalo, just based off of the Dolphins defense. Obviously, you get some positive news for them in Jalen Waddle returning from a concussion. Connor Williams and Teron Armstead were like limited practice on Friday. I think both are going to play banged up. On defense, though, Jalen Phillips out with an oblique injury. That's a substantial loss for them overall. Buffalo, on the other end of things, Jordan Poyer is going to be out at safety. They do have depth at safety. However, with the amount of motion that the Dolphins do at the line of scrimmage, not the greatest game to have a safety out. Overall, credit to the Dolphins offense. If you look at Tua's numbers across the board, whether that's when he's been blitzed, not blitzed, whatever split you want to look at, it has been great. This is a solid Buffalo defense, though. They've given up a grand total of 2 offensive touchdowns in their first 3 games. 29 points in their first 3 games. Now, of course, you have to contextualize that because it's been the Jets, the Raiders, and the Commanders, but they're generating 30% pressure despite blitzing 17% of the time. This is a test for the Miami offense. Will they score points? In all likelihood, they will score points. Will they do it consistently? That's where I'm a little bit more skeptical. I think Miami's a little bit overvalued coming off a 70-point performance last week. You think back to the first 2 weeks of the season. Again, played the Chargers, very much a coin flip game. A game that they could have easily lost. They ended up winning. Week 2 against the Patriots. I mean, the Patriots had the ball in the Miami 30-yard line with a minute left. Could have had a chance to go to overtime there. There was a fumble deep in Miami territory. There was an interception at the 3-yard line. There's a lot of things that just didn't go right for the Patriots. So we now get this performance last week, and all of a sudden, Miami is super elevated. The one thing I like about the Bills' offense in this matchup is that Vic Fangio, new defensive coordinator for Miami, likes to keep a lot of stuff in front of him. And Josh Allen has really learned to take the short stuff. Like, that's been his thing. They've been extremely successful doing this for a while now. His air yards per attempt has come down a lot. He's now 5th lowest in the league this season in terms of air yards per attempt, but success rate still consistently high. And I'm just not sure that the Dolphins defense is very good. I mean, they're dead last in success rate so far this year. Number 32. So I trust Buffalo to score more than I trust Miami. And I think that this is a valuable price. 2.8% edge for me on the Buffalo Bills in this matchup. Okay, let's move it along. Game number 2 on the board. We got the Minnesota Vikings and the Carolina Panthers. Just going to close some stuff on the computer here really quickly. A lot of pop-ups happening. Don't want to slow down the stream. Okay. Minnesota was as high as opened, I think, 3. Talked about this on Forward Progress last week on the Sunday night edition. You can check out the Sunday night edition every Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So after the day wraps up, I'm back here 8 p.m. Eastern time with Clive Bixby. We're going to preview next week's games and where we think that the lines are going to move for those games. Minnesota got all the way up to 5, down to 4.5 now at Pinnacle, and you see that in market. The total is 46 as well in this game. Minnesota, fairly healthy. I didn't get an update on Marcus Davenport yet and whether or not he's going to play in this game, but he did get in a couple limited practices this week. So certainly a possibility. The big news here is obviously Carolina. Bryce Young gets the start, returning from his ankle injury. To me, that's a downgrade from Andy Dalton. You have other injuries, especially on the defensive side of the ball, in Shaq Thompson on IR, obviously, but Frankie Louvu dealing with a hip injury. JC Horn is out as well. Like, the Panthers do not have a lot of depth to begin with on defense, and now a lot of players banged up. Xavier Woods as well, out this week with a hamstring injury. They have 39 missed tackles. That's the most in the league. Only 4 teams in the league have more than 30 tackles. So I completely understand the line move out here, but now it's at a point where I think it's just kind of settled in the right spot. Just really couldn't chase the Vikings in this. I know a lot of people don't want to bet the Vikings to win by margin, generally speaking anyways. They just don't want to have anything to do with a team that plays consistent close games to play anything but a close game. But I think that the Vikings offense is way better than people realize right now. I mean, they have 9 turnovers this year. That's a lot. And you can say, well, oh, you can't call the offense great if they're turning the ball over 9 times. A lot of that's just been a product of unluckiness, fumbled snaps from the center. Obviously, running back fumbles have been an issue for them with Madison as well. 5 of their 9 turnovers have come in opponent territory, 2 in the red zone. It's when you look at drives that haven't ended in a turnover, Minnesota scored on 36% of those. That's the second highest rate in the entire league. So now it just becomes a question of, I think the Vikings are going to score. Do we think Bryce Young can match? Well, possibly. The Vikings are terrible defensively. They've blitzed on 63% of opponent dropbacks. They've generated a pressure 16.8% of the time. That's awful. But I don't like the Carolina receiving core. I don't like what I've seen from Bryce Young so far. There's nothing to me that would indicate, other than the Vikings have a bad defense, that Carolina is just going to be able to move the ball. So personally, I'm just like fine with this number right now. I would only bet Minnesota if I had to, but at this point, it's too much. All right, few other questions. This was in regards to Buffalo. Would I play -3, -105? I would, but I would significantly reduce my bet size. That would be half size. No Poyer took me off the game. That's understandable. I think that's a pretty substantial downgrade without Poyer there. How did the Miami performance show in your model? I basically ended up upgrading the Dolphins by like 2 points against the league average team. So it was pretty substantial move. Frank Reich is so overrated as a coach. I would have to agree. There was a point last week where I was just watching the game and I'm like, Frank Reich is not it. Okay. Moving on. Broncos and Bears. Money on the Bears today. Brought this down to Denver -3 flat or even +100. Total at 47. Okay. This is a challenging one right now. 2 very small edges. I'll talk about the game through and through. So Denver, lots of injuries to deal with. Josie Jewell, their inside linebacker, is out this week with a hip injury. They have injuries in the secondary. I don't believe Justin Simmons is going to play today. I haven't seen that confirmed, but he was a DNP on Friday with the hip injury. He missed last week's game where they gave up 70 points. Chicago still has the offensive line injuries. Tevin Jenkins, I think, is eligible to return next week. Braxton Jones is on IR as well. Defensively, though, this is the big issue, the secondary, right? Kyler Gordon is on IR. Eddie Jackson is out. Jalen Johnson is out. Josh Blackwell is out. They're missing 3 corners and a top safety. That's a real problem for a defense that wasn't very good to begin with. Lots of Bears money continuing to come into the market right now. We'll see if we can get a refresh. But yeah, more and more Bears money coming into the market. I'm going to probably revisit this game afterwards and potentially lock in a pick when things are all settled. But the Bears defense is a tragedy. Yes, the Broncos defense is bad. The Bears have allowed 34 points per game in their last 13 games. They just give up points to everyone. Now they're missing defensive starters. As bad as the Denver defense is, their offense is actually fine. Last week, I know it was only a 20-point output, but a lot of going for it in Dolphins territory because of the situation in the game. They've had some bad turnover luck, some costly penalties. But overall, I do think Denver is going to be able to move the ball. It's a matter of whether or not Chicago can as well. Obviously, you'd have some optimism against the Denver defense. They just do not generate any pressure whatsoever. Denver's created a pressure 20.4% of opponent dropbacks this season. That's the worst in the NFL. Even when they have pressured the quarterback, it's come with an average of 2.77 seconds after the snap. That's the second slowest in the league. The only team slower is playing right now in the Atlanta Falcons. So Chicago does have an opportunity here. Justin Fields was running the ball a little bit more, looked more like traditional Justin Fields last year in terms of the way that he was moving it offensively. the over a look here? I mean, again, this is about what the number is 47 now, which is a key number. It's the worst number that's been around all week. This was 45, 45 and a half, 46 at times over the course of the week. I still do have a small edge on the over, but just be aware of that. Good point by Charles as well. Market has had a ton of bear support through 3 games, and that has happened pretty consistently, which I would agree is a little bit insane when you consider the state of the Chicago Bears right now. Might come back to this one to lock something in. We will decide shortly. Okay, Baltimore and Cleveland here. So this is the most dramatic shift this morning. The news that Deshaun Watson is out. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to start. PJ Walker was elevated from the practice squad as well. Baltimore shifts to being the favorite from being a 2.5-point underdog heading into today's game. The total 38.5. Very challenging for me to put a number on this game. Obviously, you have the injuries to Baltimore, which Ronnie Stanley out again. You have the skill position players, whether that's Rashad Bateman with the hamstring injury, Odell Beckham, J.K. Dobbins season ending, obviously. Defensively, Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Williams. Marcus Williams was full practice, though. I have to look at his game status heading into today. Issues in the linebacking core for Baltimore as well. It's been a rough injury report for them. Cleveland, on the other hand, pretty healthy. They get Greg Newsome back. He injured his elbow earlier in the year. He's returning. It's just Deshaun Watson. What's the downgrade from Deshaun Watson to DTR? Now, a lot of people are like what they see from DTR, and I am one of those people, generally speaking. I think he's looked pretty solid at times, but this is a different breed. This is the Ravens, good coaching staff, a Ravens defense with personnel that I don't love, but consistently gotten the most out of that personnel. A really challenging game for me to handicap altogether or put a number on with a high degree of accuracy. And typically, unless I feel pretty strongly about something, I will avoid that. I'm most interested today to see how the Cleveland defense holds up because they played Cincinnati, which is a team that they've historically had a lot of success against with injury to Joe Burrow. Then they played Pittsburgh. Then they played Tennessee. Good matchup advantages for them. I still think the Browns defense is very good, but they're going to get Lamar Jackson today. Different breed, obviously running the ball a lot more this year as well, scrambling a lot more. So more interested in this game than anything from a betting perspective. Just incredibly challenging to put a number on the game. One other thing just to note, and I've talked about this before, as Baltimore still taking more money in market right now. You game plan for Deshaun Watson all week and you get a different quarterback on game day. That's a challenge. There are some studies that show that. And I don't know. I'm just really interested. Big Ross watched DTR in college, thinks he's going to be good at this level. I think that there's a distinct possibility that he could be. If you had Ravens +3, would you look for a middle? It depends, really, what you think of the game now. If you think that the value is lies somewhere in between, sure, go for it. You don't have to in any stretch. And really, you're only getting the numbers like 2 and 1 and a tie as well with the way that the line stands right now. So just be aware of that. All right, we move on. Actually, one more thing before we do. So I don't like this advice at all. So throw Browns in a teaser with the Chiefs. So typically when you're playing teasers, especially when you're doing them on game day, I'm not suggesting that this can't win. Obviously, there's going to be lots of scenarios where the Browns stay within 7.5 points. But you want to do so on games where there's a little bit more certainty. Like I don't really want to be teasing a backup quarterback who finds out that he's starting on game day. Like that's the definition of uncertainty. Like and sub. Absolutely. Appreciate that, Geeked Out Basketball. Anyone out there, like or sub to the channel. All right. Pittsburgh and Houston. Little bit of Houston money today. So this is where going to be where my second pick comes from. I'm going to go standard unit on the Pittsburgh Steelers -3. plus 103. Obviously, betting against Houston on game day last week did not work out well. They beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. Pretty convincing fashion. Was a very weird game for the Jags. There was a punt return touchdown. There was obviously some turnovers on that side of the field as well, on the Texans side of the field. Overall, pretty sloppy game from the Jags. This is one where I think that there is a very big mismatch in this game, which will be the Steelers defensive line against the Houston offensive line, which is being under accounted for. The state of the Houston offensive line is a disaster. Kenyon Green, IR. Juice Scruggs, IR. Titus Howard, IR. Laramie Tunsil out again this week with a knee injury. Josh Jones out this week with a hand injury. Michael Dieter, their center, went DNP limited with a chest injury. It's a disaster. And there's very few teams in the league where you would, like, essentially you got the Steelers, who are known for their defensive line and generating pressure. Look what they did to the Raiders last week with Jimmy Garoppolo. I am a believer in CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud, the tape looks good. He looks poised. I mean, he's just the third quarterback in NFL history to throw for at least 900 yards in his first 3 starts. The other 2 were Cam Newton and Justin Herbert. His air yards per attempt, 7.8, the most by a rookie for 3 games that hadn't thrown a pick since 2016 when it was Dak Prescott at 8.2. The issue I have with CJ Stroud so far, clean pocket, his EPA per dropback, 3rd out of 35 qualified quarterbacks. Pressure, 34th out of 35. The likelihood he's going to face pressure is extremely high in this game, and his numbers have seen a substantial drop-off when that's the case. Other side of the ball, Steelers obviously still dealing with the Deontay Johnson injury. I don't like their depth at receiver, but they posted a season high in yards per play last week, 5.5 against the Raiders. Kenny Pickett had one of the best games of his career. It was the best yards per attempt showing by any Steelers quarterback since 2021 when Ben Roethlisberger did it. And right now, the Texans defense is just not very good. They're bottom 5 in both run defense and pass defense. So facing similar statistical defense last week, Pickett was able to move the ball. I am a believer in this being a very rough matchup for the Houston Texans today. A little bit concerned in terms of the spot, I guess. Shorter week. They had like the bad travel day after Monday Night Football where they were stuck on the tarmac. But like aside from that, I just like can't deal with it. Okay, so the Houston offensive line injuries. It's funny that it's funny how quickly we forget. Been dealing with O-line injuries for a few weeks now. So far, they've played okay. Like, we're very quick to forget they got smoked by Gardner Minshew a couple weeks ago. Colts defense got after it hard. Just because the Jags defense didn't last week doesn't mean that the most superior pass rush they're going to face will not today. Total in Pittsburgh. Let's see here. Pittsburgh, Houston, small lean to the under, but nothing that really sticks out. In terms of these prices, I would like, minus 3.5 plus 112. Those are very different. I don't know off the top of my head, honestly. Just there's tons of price converters out there. I just don't want to stall the show by giving that off the top of my head. And yes, I just described Stroud in 2 years at Ohio State. Any good defense? He struggled. Not that I'm saying that he can't have a great career, because he definitely can and has been very impressive so far. Next game. Let's move it on. Rams and Colts. Rams now settle in as 1-point favorites on the road. Total's been bet down to 45 and continuing on the way down. At one point in the week, early in the week, the bet I probably wanted to make the most was the Indianapolis Colts. This was after seeing the Rams suffer injuries on the offensive line on Monday Night Football against the Cincinnati Bengals. It was Joe Noteboom, Alaric Jackson, both injured. Noteboom is fine. Alaric Jackson is out with the hamstring injury. That will have an impact. But what happened over the course of the week after Anthony Richardson was announced returning from his concussion, which I like, by the way. Big Richardson fan so far. You get Ryan Kelly out, their center. You get Quentin Nelson dealing with a toe injury, playing in all likelihood today. And Bernard Raymond, their left tackle, gets a concussion in Friday practice as well. So you have massive offensive line injuries. DeForest Buckner not playing with a groin injury on the defensive line. So kind of like a strength for the Colts, not necessarily a strength, but becomes a pretty significant weakness on both sides of the ball. Really, I just think that this line is kind of settled in the right place at this point. You have to account for those injuries altogether. I'm missing the camp of like, this is just a fine number, both side and total. There's nothing really to do about this other than to, at least in my opinion, other than just to pass. I don't like the Richardson anytime TD prices personally. I know it's been a hot thing for the early start of the season, but I'm not there. I'm not there. And for those who are asking, -125, 2.5 -125, the better play. So that's for Ruark Smith in the chat. Okay, let's keep it going through the 1 o'clock games here. Bucks and Saints. So I'm just assuming that the Saints was the Right Angle Sports release earlier. They do a show right at the start of Pizza Buffet as well. And the whole market steamed out at that exact time. So I'm just going to imagine that that's what it was. The big news today is obviously that Derek Carr, who has the AC joint injury in his shoulder, is going to play. I don't know how I feel about that. For those who watched my other stuff over the course of the week, whether that's Forward Progress on Wednesday, Mayo Media Network hits, You Better You Bet, whatever. You probably heard me talk about liking the Saints, which I do because of their defense. Everyone was kind of like gargling Baker Mayfield's balls before the Eagles game on Monday Night Football. I watched half an hour of ESPN talking about how Mayfield's turned the corner, like just completely forgetting that they played the Vikings, did not put up a good offensive output against the Vikings, only really won that game because of the Vikings' 3 turnovers. Then they played the Bears, which was like 2017, very late into the fourth quarter before the 27-17 final. Like not all that impressive. Then they played a good defense in the Philadelphia Eagles, and the wheels came off. And I think that this is another bad defense for them to face. The Saints have gone 11 straight games without allowing more than 20 points. Their defense is 5th against the run, 10th against the pass in success rate. Yes, there's a few injuries. Paulson Adebo, Jordan Howden out in the secondary. Overall, though, this team has played this Bucs offense, different quarterback, Tom Brady, pretty well. And I just see this as a very uphill challenge for Baker Mayfield in this game to produce points. The other side of things, Tampa Bay's defense, pretty banged up. Jamel Dean is definitely out. Carlton Davis went from a full practice on Thursday to limited on Friday with that toe injury. Devin White has been limited in practice all week. They're still without Kalaya Kancey, who hasn't played. He's got the calf injury. Vita Vea sporting a pec injury. Very bad, banged up, not bad defense, banged up defense, full of injuries. You get the Derek Carr announcement today. Now it's like, okay, how healthy is Carr? Right? With Winston, you kind of know what you're getting. A guy who could potentially make some mistakes. Guy who will probably stretch the field a little bit more than Carr altogether. Like a lot of things. But now it's just, I don't know. I don't know. Nothing I can really do with this game anymore. If I was going to play anything, it would be the under at 41, just because of the Bucs offense. Alternatively, again, I don't lock in. Okay, so maybe it wasn't the Saints release. I'll talk about that in a second. It was just the timing, very odd timing. But right as I came on, the Saints got released, and it wasn't that. Okay. Justin Simmons officially inactive for the Broncos game as well. So what we're going to do here is go back to Denver and Chicago. This is going to get me over the top on the 47 for a half play. I already broke down this game. I said I'd come back, and I'm going to come back for a half play there. For those who have been late to the party, just the 3 plays so far: Bills, Steelers, and the Broncos over. As we move on to the next game, Washington and Philly. Pinnacle out to this weird 10 number, which is really like, honestly, closer to like a 9 overall. So don't put too much stock into that altogether. Washington's healthy. Logan Thomas is back from his concussion. Just like nothing on the injury report for them. Philly's got Quez Watkins out. Avonte Maddox, obviously, expected season-ending injury with the torn pec. Justin Evans at safety went DNP, full practice. It's an interesting game. My number is never really going to get me to a play here because I'm like very much in the same range with a very small lean to Washington. Sam Howell takes a lot of sacks. He's taken 19 sacks in 3 games. He's got to figure out a way to get the ball out quicker. Now, this is on Eric Bieniemy, in my opinion, to do something to get him some easier looks, run the ball more heavily, but they got to do something, or else this Eagles defensive front is going to absolutely kill him. The issue I have in evaluating the Washington offense is that they have also had some pretty bad luck. And I'm going to say luck in quotations because they are bad in the red zone. They're a horrible red zone team so far this year. We saw this twice last week against the Bills. They got inside the 20 twice, didn't end up with any points. The problem is this has been a consistent trend under Ron Rivera for a while, for a long time. So I'm not sure if there's just something there overall where this team struggles to punch it in, but they're going to need to punch it in. Now, with Philly, I'm still not impressed with the offense. Jalen Hurts is 25th in success rate, 22nd in EPA, 3rd highest turnover-worthy play rate in the entire league. Played better last week, but Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis is out, Jamel Dean got injured in the game. I'm still not sold on the Philly offense quite yet. Strong lean Washington, not enough to play it, is where I'm at right now. This is an injury to report. Connor Williams for the Dolphins. I'm not sure quite how big it is off the top of my head. Let me quickly check my depth charts here. Probably worth something. I doubt you'll see the market react, though, a whole lot based off of that news. Okay. Bengals and Titans. I'm not going to spend too much on this because, Joe Burrow was triple full practice this week. And that would indicate healthy. Yeah, I did see this. Terrible. But I still don't know with any degree of certainty. Like, I watched the Monday Night Football game. He can't throw downfield right now. He can't stretch the field. He can't extend plays with his legs. It's just so difficult to quantify that in a game. And you look at Tennessee's biggest defensive weakness, they can get burned over the top a lot. They're number 2 in average depth of target on the defensive side of the ball, meaning opponents attack them deep. Number 1 actually is Cincinnati as well. But without knowing that, I just don't want to bet the game. Like, I just feel like I'm taking a guess at what might happen here for like no reason. There's other games on the board. Obviously, if Burrow was healthy, this would be a steal of a line, in my opinion. But we just don't know. And within the span of a week, like, I don't know what the Rams were doing on Monday Night Football, but they just basically gave Burrow everything underneath, and he just kept taking that over and over and over and over. This is actually a big surprise as well. DeForest Buckner. I can't remember who tweeted that he was not expected to play, and also he went DNP 3 times. Be interesting to see his effectiveness today off of the triple DNP. That's it for the early games. The 1 o'clocks. Someone DM'd me on Twitter just asking for if I could give out more leans. I would. I'll be very clear and specific if I think that something is like on the edge or on the cusp of being playable and is not. And we just haven't got there. 4:05, we get to the Chargers and the Raiders. Oh, Frankie Louvu active changes things as well, by the way. That was, I think, a little bit more expected. And yes, Scott, like the reporting, I don't want to act like I'm above everyone else. I started in media. I started in like broadcast journalism. I worked as a radio producer in my early 20s. Now everything is like a race to report things as quickly as possible, but it's been too much the last couple of weeks. And it's not like, the thing is, some of it is respected media personalities. Some of it is just like people who are looking for clout. It's rough though. It's rough out there. You got to be careful. Okay. Raiders out to 7 at Pinnacle. So best price in market, or very close to, is that 7 on the Raiders at Pinnacle. Total 48.5. Obviously the big news here, another quarterback situation. Jimmy Garoppolo is out. Aiden O'Connell will get the start. Aiden O'Connell looked very good in the preseason. He did. That's the preseason. Skylar Thompson looked great in the preseason for the Dolphins last year. Then he had a regular season start, and he looked like he never thrown a football in his life. They're battling the Chargers. The Chargers are the 28th ranked defense in the league. Joey Bosa's out. Derwin James is out. JT Woods is out. Eric Kendricks is back. But missing some key players, obviously. Opportunity for success is there. The Raiders have to figure out how to start running the ball. They have to. They have the league's fewest runs of 10-plus yards, 2. Josh Jacobs is averaging the second fewest yards after contact per rush in the entire league. They got to figure it out. In my opinion, Aiden O'Connell has an extremely wide range. His ceiling is higher than Brian Hoyer, who is the actual like backup. And the floor, in my opinion, is way lower. It's similar to like a Skylar Thompson from last year. So this creates like what I would say is like these extreme outcomes that I would want to bet more than the spread in the game. So when I say that, I'm not betting this game, but if I was, I would take something like the Raiders money line instead of the spread, or I would take something like the Chargers minus 20.5 alternate line, because I think that the likelihood that we can get one of the extremes is way higher. I'll be interested to see Justin Herbert without Mike Williams on IR. His center, Corey Linsley, I saw like he has like a weird illness or something. He's going to miss 4 games on IR at least. Austin Eckler, they're sitting him again because they have a bye next week. It's a bad defense that doesn't generate pressure. So this is kind of like a tell-all for the Chargers offense, because without either one of Mike Williams or Keenan Allen last year, they really struggled. Now they drafted Quentin Johnson to replace that, to help with that type of situation. But ultimately, I think the best way to play this is look for an extreme outcome. Okay, so when I typically, Barton, try to reference the stat that I'm talking about. So I rarely reference PFF grades, but sometimes I do. I rarely reference the DVOA. It's more so EPA success rate and yards per play. So I try to get those in there whenever I can. But either way, no matter what way you cut it, the Chargers defense is the Raiders defense on the Chargers defense. The defenses are no bueno. No lean on the game, side or total, nothing there. Patriots and Cowboys. I haven't done this in a long time where I've, you got the Cowboys symbol back here. For those of you that don't know, I am a Dallas Cowboys fan, but I try to remain as impartial as possible when I break down their games. I want them to win every single week, but for those who've watched this for years, you know that I can bet on Dallas. I can bet against Dallas. Do this as impartially as possible. Pulling up the betting market for Patriots and Cowboys. This is settled at -6. I suspect, and the total 43. I suspect we're going to see Dallas money later on because Tyler Biotish, their center, and Zach Martin are both trending towards playing. Their left tackle, Tyron Smith, is out, but they might get that interior of their offensive line back. I think that's substantial enough where it would warrant a move, but it does seem like that's going to be the case. Patriots have kind of injuries all over, but Jonathan Jones, I think, is likely to return at corner from his ankle injury, which would be big for them, considering they're also missing Jack Jones and Marcus Jones. I get the move towards New England. I really do. I think naturally a lot of people look at Dallas's loss last week and they're like, I want to buy low on this team. I want to get in on the Cowboys. But you have to account for the Trayvon Diggs injury, for one. And we saw the defense not look very good in their first game without Trayvon Diggs. Are the Patriots going to be the team that exploits Deron Bland as a starter or Stephon Gilmore covering a number one receiver? Probably not. Because Devontae Parker, Juju Smith-Schuster, Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, these aren't going to strike fear in the opponents. So maybe this is the one where Dallas's defense gets back on track. But I also believe the Patriots are slightly underrated. You look at the first two games of the year, they lose to the Eagles. They don't cover the spread in either of these games, actually, Eagles or Dolphins. But they lose to the Eagles and was a very misleading game. Defensive touchdown from the Eagles. Really, the Patriots dominated that game after going down 14-0. They couldn't pull it out. Week 2 against the Dolphins. I mentioned this earlier, but you got a couple situations where the Patriots turned the ball over deep in Dolphins territory, played a pretty good game. The issue I have is Mac Jones against this defensive front. Mac Jones, very unathletic. And really, there's two things that are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. And here's what I mean by that. New England, Mac Jones specifically, is third in the NFL in EPA per dropback when they use play action this year. The Cowboys defense is 30th in opponent passer rating, 27th in yards per attempt, 22nd in EPA per dropback against play action this year. So Dallas has been burned by play action against a good play action team. Other side of things, though, Dallas plays a lot of man coverage. 41.5% of their snaps. That's a very high number. Mac Jones sucks against man coverage. And that's because they don't have the receivers to typically beat man. So I'm all over the place here. But I do think that we might get some late money on Dallas purely because of the offensive line and the likelihood that players are going to return. I don't agree, Giuseppe. Mac Jones is nowhere near Zach Wilson territory. You know who's in Zach Wilson territory? Zach Wilson, and Zach Wilson alone. All right. Next game is the Cardinals and the 49ers. I'm going to be very quick here No one seems to really have an opinion on this game. We've just kind of been around 14 all week. Total 44. I think it did drop off 44, got bet back up. Good numbers. Like I don't really, I don't like getting involved in games with big spreads, generally speaking, unless I have like you need a pretty decent sized numbers edge in order to do that because the points are less valuable as you get higher. I don't know. I think this is a good number. That's it. Like, there's just not really a lot for me to talk about here. It's never been in consideration. I don't want to break down the game from a pure X's and O's perspective when I'm pretty much basically exactly on the number for both side and total. And the market has not thought anything of this game to move off one way or another either. So that's that. Sunday Night Football. Chiefs and Jets. One-way action on the Jets this week. Couldn't be me. You can tell me everything you want about this game. KC overvalued, Taylor Swift stuff and whatever. They look better than they are because of the Bears last week. Whatever. Like I've heard that already this week. The Jets with Zach Wilson is not an NFL caliber quarterback. He's not an NFL caliber backup quarterback. You can tell me about the public betting splits or whatever, Vegas, and it's going to need the Jets to cover whatever. I'm not saying I'm going and laying it with Kansas City. I'm not. How, if you're a teaser player, how you don't use the Chiefs in your teasers this week, I will never know. I really won't. You're basically going to need Mahomes to beat Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's been pressured on 52% of his dropbacks this year. It's the only quarterback in the league above 50%. And some people might say, oh, Zach Wilson's offensive line hasn't held up. No. He's averaged 3.12 seconds from snap to throw. He's the slowest league-wide in making decisions. On sacks, he's averaged 3.76 seconds to throw. This is a bad O-line, but it's not a bad O-line that's been getting consistently burned, and that's why Wilson is just bad. Wilson is just bad. You need an elite defensive performance from the Jets, similar to what they got against Buffalo in week 1, and that's certainly possible, but the Jets' defense hasn't been really great at stopping the run, and candidly, after that week 1 game, they've just been fine altogether. My number in the game is close to what we are in market now. I'm a little bit leaning towards Chiefs, a little bit of a lean towards the over, oddly. Weird. I think KC's offense I just have being very high. All right. That's the Sunday games. Now, let me just do a quick review here of this board. So we only have the 3 picks locked in for the Sunday games. Additional leans that I have. So we locked in Buffalo. We locked in Denver over. Let me just bring those up on screen really quickly as well so people can see, just in case anyone joined late. Once again, you can also track these on Betstamp at any time as well. Rob Pizzola is the account right here. Just follow me on Betstamp. I only lock in plays from this show, so you can see them at any time if you want to set notifications or anything like that. Other leans that I have, very slim at this point. New Orleans under 41 is a lean, not really within the range of being playable. And that's because of the Tampa Bay offense that I'm getting that. So if anything, maybe Tampa Bay team total under. Aside from that, pretty damn quiet. Tomorrow's game, really quickly, just for a market breakdown here. So Seahawks are back to favorites now, which is not surprising on the Andrew Thomas news. I had some consideration towards playing the Giants this week if Thomas was returning, but he's not. And my read on the Giants before the season, I think might just be right. Like, they could just be bad. All the talk about all the wide receiver additions in the offseason, aside from Jalen Hyatt, who they barely use, they don't really stretch the field at all. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan. Marcus Williams out for the Ravens as well, so he's not making his return this week. Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's kind of like Seahawks or nothing, but I think that this number is fine. All right, I'll hang around and I'll answer questions here over the course of the next little bit. Once again, if you did enjoy the content, there's a bunch of you watching right now. Just do me a favor, smash that like button down below. If you're not subscribed here on Forward Progress, I don't know what you're waiting for. We put out content every single day of the week with the exception of Saturdays. Pretty useful, I think. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback about what we're putting out on a weekly basis. So please, let's at least push this to 100 likes, but there's 370 of you in here. So let's do a lot more than that. Survivor. Okay. So I'm not a huge fan of like talking about Survivor regularly. But Circa Millions, you've already had to, or Circa Survivor, you already had to submit those. So for those of you who are in other like regular Survivor pools, it's all about maximizing your expected value over the course of the year. I tried to do that last week, lost some with Jacksonville. It is what it is. For the amount that San Fran is favored, they're probably going to be pretty under-owned this week. So if you want to take there's no safe play in the NFL, but a team that has like close to a 90% implied win probability, this might be the week. Yes, you're going to have week 11 against Tampa. You'll have another game in Arizona at some point over the course of the year. Week 18 against the Rams might not matter. It's not like you have a ton of great spots for San Fran anyways. So I would lean towards San Fran. Again, I think we're early in the season here, and a lot of people are trying to differentiate this week by using a team like Minnesota. I would personally just avoid that. They have higher ownership than I would have expected for a team that's in a 4.5 point favorite range. So that's where I would go. Olave anytime touchdown plus 200 seems like good value. I can tell you what I have there. I don't know. I don't have good value on Olave. The biggest value I have on a Saints touchdown is Taysom Hill, actually. And in fact, I think they'll run him even more in the red zone now with the Derek Carr injury. Best teaser option with the Chiefs. Good question. So typically speaking, if you don't know what a Wong teaser is yet, probably learn about it. I'd highly suggest so at least. We don't have much that's in the range of Wong teaser this week. Do you trust the Titans? I don't know. You might. They would kind of fit the definition of, teasing a team through 3-7 with a low total. That's probably where I would go. I wouldn't feel great about it though. I'm not even sure if open teasers are still a thing, or else that would be an option as well. Giants over, I'm off it. Sorry, I didn't mention that in the total. I really wanted the Giants over, but the way that the injury report played out for the Giants, I just don't really have it. Vikings team total over, don't hate it at all. I do think that their offense is pretty underrated altogether. Any TD bets that I like, yeah. Going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel with some of these, though. Really going to be scraping the bottom. Oh, wrong spreadsheet. Okay, let's see what I got here really quickly. Mentioned Taysom Hill. That was one that stood out to me. What else did we have here? I don't know. A lot of the stuff that I want to make this actually actionable and not be like some sort of BS. Nothing that stands out, honestly. This is sorry, Steven. I don't want to just be forcing it for the sake of forcing it, or else I would. Big play here in Atlanta, Jacksonville. I don't think Drake London got his feet in. That's big. That's big for my own personal sanity. There's nothing better than Still 6 minutes left. Still going to have a little bit of a sweat, but it's a lot easier. What is this question? How many people did you buy a sandwich for at Bet Bash 2? Bet Bash 2 or Bet Bash 3? Bet Bash 2, I was mostly purchased sandwiches by other people. Ed from Right Angle Sports purchased a sandwich for me. Bet Bash 3, I purchased a burger for Plus EV Analytics, and I purchased a round of sandwiches for some unnamed people. Not that it matters. Bet Bash 2. All right. Appreciate everyone in here. I'm back tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern time. You guys know the drill by now. Hopefully you do. Just join me at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Everyone who's like, oh, I want to get out and bet early lines NFL. Well, guess what? Pinnacle posted last week they had $3,000 limits on Sunday night as we were talking about it through the show. There's just a lot. I bought you a sandwich? All right. Maybe I did. That's how good my memory is. Mostly I was getting sandwiches purchased for me that year. It's just a really, really odd, funny question. 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight. Subscribe, click the bell, turn on notifications. That's it. I'll see you there. We're going to go through all of next week's card. We'll break it down. Hopefully we have a winning day. Sorry I didn't have enough plays this week. I know that people out there are itching. This is not what it's about. Bet responsibly. This is all I would really bet. If I had no NFL action this week, that's all that I would have really bet today. So hopefully everyone out there has a good day. Tailing, if not, just have a good day with your own bets, unless you're opposite my bets, in which case I cannot, in full transparency, wish you winning those bets. I just can't. Forward progress tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you for tuning in today. This has been the Pizza Buffet presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. If you're in Ontario, sign up using code HAMMER. Very quality sportsbook. I highly recommend it. I'll catch everyone else later on tonight. Good luck with your bets today.